Good afternoon, everyone. Call the meeting to order for the Personnel Pension Insurance Committee regular meeting of January 24th. And is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board? Seeing and hearing none, next order is the election of chairperson. Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, if I could have the floor, this is Commissioner Payne.
Yes, Commissioner Payne.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Avedisian for chairman, please.
Okay. Are there any other nominations?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Salemi.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Alvin Taylor. Mr. Taylor's been chair of PP&I for a number of years now, and I think he's done a great job, and I'd like to see him continue. So I nominate Alvin Taylor as chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other nominations? May I have a motion to close nominations?
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. All right, with a show of hands,
No, could I,
Um,
excuse me, could I have a roll call vote, please, Mr. Chairman?
we can do a roll call vote.
Thank you.
All right, for those in favor of Commissioner Avedisian for chair, Commissioner Avedisian,
Yes.
Commissioner Curry, and Commissioner Curry is chair, so Commissioner Curry will abstain from voting.
Under the bylaw.
Under the bylaw, as an ex officio member, due to your title as chairman of the district board,
Ah,
the chairman does not have a vote on election of chairman in the committee.
that's right, thank you.
You can't vote for vice chair.
Yes.
It's crazy.
All right, Commissioner Desai,
Aye. Yes.
Commissioner Drake,
Yes.
Commissioner Gentile. Commissioner Gentile?
What are we saying yes to?
Yes.
Does everybody understand before we go again that an aye vote is for Commissioner Avedisian for chair? So let's start again. Commissioner Avedisian,
Aye.
Commissioner Desai,
Aye.
Commissioner Drake,
Aye.
Commissioner Gentile, Commissioner Lester,
Nay.
Commissioner Magnan.
Yes.
Commissioner Payne,
Yes.
Commissioner Salemi,
Nay.
Commissioner Stuber,
Nay.
Commissioner Taylor,
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf.
Nay.
Vote is
5-5.
so now what happens?
Cheers. You gotta break.
You could vote for Commissioner Taylor, and if that also remains in a tie, further nominations could be made, or could move on to election of vice chair.
Then we'll move on to Commissioner for Vice Chair. Is there any nominations for Vice Chair?
Like to nominate Maureen, vice chair.
Are there any other nominations for Vice Chair? Yes, Commissioner Taylor.
Commissioner Wolf.
Are there any other nominations? All right, the nominations will be closed. And we'll do a roll call again. For Commissioner Magnan for Vice Chair, Avedisian,
Aye.
Commissioner Desai,
Aye.
Commissioner Drake,
Aye.
Commissioner Gentile, Commissioner Lester,
Nay.
Commissioner Magnan, Commissioner Payne,
Aye.
Commissioner Salemi,
Nay.
Commissioner Stuber, Commissioner Taylor,
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf.
Nay.
Mr. Chair, do we have the clerk just read the
I'm waiting for,
Sorry, I'm trying to catch up. That was 5-5.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask, is there a provision that allows the chair to cast a tiebreaker vote, even though if he's, I mean, there are many times the chair who doesn't vote is allowed the opportunity to cast a tiebreaker vote? Just ask.
I know as chair of the district board, I have that right. I don't know if I have that.
Under the bylaws, if I might, Mr. Chairman, Chris Stone, District Council, under the bylaws, as stated earlier, as to the vote, the election of chair, the bylaws specifically state that you do not have a vote, whether it be to break a tie, make a tie, or to show a preference.
Okay.
That same bylaw only speaks to or restricts your ability to vote on chair. It does not, for whatever reason, restrict your right to vote for the vice chair. So in effect, you could cast a vote for either of the candidates for vice chair.
Pardon me?
B2A. So it's bylaw B2A, but subject to correction. I'll have to look at it.
All right, we're going to, and at this point, what happens if we don't have a chair or a vice chair?
You would continue as the temporary chair.
Then I will vote for Commissioner Wolf for vice chair.
Now, he would take the gavel,
Yes.
for the lack of a chair, right?
Chair.
It's pretty interesting. Yeah, she just didn't show up.
Yeah, just James up on
Congratulations.
Those rules that one. It's one thing.
What, buddy? Buddy, what was the ruling on the chairman? Not,
What's that?
the chairman can't break the tie. What-
We'll put the minutes.
Not for chair, but for vice chair. That's why I
Get to all that stuff.
know he can for vice chair. That's why he just did it.
This was strange, specifically for chair, you can't.
It's, he's saying it's in the bylaws, but I know that it only.
All right, item number 5, approval of the meeting minutes, of October 25th, 2023. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion approved.
Made, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
I,
Opposed? I'll abstain, wasn't here. We'll move on to item number 6, discussion regarding district employees elected to the General Assembly, Connecticut General Statute, Section 23-A with a possible executive session. And we'll move to item number A, current district employees elected to the General Assembly. Who's going to be taking that?
Jamie?
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Jamie Harlow from Human Resources. Item A was specifically asking the question of current district employees elected to the General Assembly. And as far as Human Resources is aware, we have one employee that has been elected to the General Assembly, employee James Sanchez, who is an employee in our local 3713 bargaining unit, utility systems monitoring technician out of operations.
Thank you. All right, and we'll move on to item B, district policy regarding employee attendance and compliance with the General Statute 23A. Current examples of its application.
Okay, In regards to a specific policy, other than kind of compliance with the statute, we don't have anything specific that speaks to employees holding political office. We do have other policies within our union contracts or our employee handbook that speaks to conflicts of interest, code of conduct, and also outside employment. Those would be the other policies that we would have, but nothing that speaks specifically to the statute noted.
Mr. Chairman? Could I?
Commissioner
Thank
Slim.
you. So, if I may ask Jamie, we're specifically talking about an employee who's been elected to the Connecticut General Assembly. Is that correct? We're
That's
not talking about any other elected officials, because we've had other elected officials serving this board. Historically, have you done any research to see if any other employee has ever been a member of the General Assembly?
I don't know where we would find that information, but from at least the information I have, I'm not aware of anyone else that has been a member of the General Assembly.
Well, we do have
I was
at least one, yeah, and then
Commissioner Cabela?
we also have Council Stone, who was elected to the General Assembly too. I mean, historically, we've had other employees that have served both the district and, no, you weren't employed by the district.
I was a commissioner.
You were a commissioner, but you weren't an employee in the district. So
Yeah,
I'm saying that there may be others I don't know of, but I do know that Council Stone was.
If I may, Scott Jelson. Circumstance surrounding Mr. Stone, he was a part-time employee, right? So difference. Mr. Sanchez is a full-time MDC employee. Chris Stone at the time was a part-time employee.
Well, I understand that, but there may have been, I'm not saying there was a policy, but there may have been some, agreement as to what hours you could serve, at the district, at your part-time job and, at the other. So that, those hours may have conflicted and it could have been shifted around, to accommodate that, which I think would have been fine. I'm not suggesting there was anything, questionable about it. I'm just, so that's the only other example, I guess, that we have, unless somebody else could remember another person from the General Assembly, but
It's
Scott
not a
Jelson.
data point. I mean, Jamie Harlow again, it's not a data point in our system of record. So again, unless someone brought that information to my attention, unfortunately, I'm not aware of anyone else.
okay.
Scott?
Yes, if I may, to your question, there has been circumstances where people were elected to not the General Assembly, but City Council and those types of things. So we have made accommodations for those circumstances as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Avedisian?
Through the chair, just out of curiosity,
I was a city council person and I was on this.
this is on here, just so I can understand a little better. Is there any issue that we should be aware of that had prompted us looking into this?
Yes, if I may, we were asked by Commissioner Taylor to give a report to this committee regarding a policy, which, as Jamie mentioned, we don't have a policy. This is really the first circumstance that we've had recently in the last number of years where an full-time employee was elected to the General Assembly. So we were asked to provide, a policy or if there wasn't a policy, which there isn't, we've asked for legal counsel to give us their opinion on what we're required to comply with for state statute. I think it's 2-3A. And so we have reviewed that with district council. I've reviewed that with Jamie. We have been asked by Mr. Sanchez to, I know that I use the word accommodate. I know it's a bad word legally, but asked to modify his schedule such that he could meet his obligations at the legislature. We have accommodated Mr. Sanchez in the past as a council person. We have offered exactly that accommodation. I believe we're consistent with the statute, which is when Mr. Sanchez needs to leave, he can. He needs to take his vacation or his earned time. He can leave at any point. We just need to notify his supervisor. He's got union regulations he's got to follow, but we're more than willing to provide him with all opportunity to meet his needs. Mr. Sanchez has asked us through Jamie that he is looking for more than that. He's looking for either a shift change. His department that he works for, it's not a shift coverage. I'll let Chris Stone talk about this, but the statute refers to shift coverage. He does not work in an environment where there are shifts. There's just one shift during the day. He has also recently asked to work remotely. Jamie has iterated. I know you all have, you should have a copy of a memo that Jamie wrote on this. It's on open text. So the data is there. The facts are there of what we are aware of, what the request is. And so we're simply just presenting to the committee tonight what we were asked for and what the ask is from the employee.
All right, so this is just an ask to modify it. Nobody's saying that anybody's not being treated properly or not following the rules and so forth. Okay. That's,
Yeah, if I may, Scott Jealous, I just want to clarify. We've been asked, what is the policy? What is the statute? Are we in compliance with the statute? We believe we are in compliance with the statute. We have offered Mr. Sanchez the opportunity to leave at any point during the day or the whole day, or whatever he needs to do to accommodate his legislative schedule. I'm sure he's not aware of that at this point, but whatever that is, we're willing to accommodate. He will have to take his vacation and earn time to do that. He has suggested that he would like to. Sure.
That's not necessarily correct. He has the option.
Yes, correct. Thank you. Sorry. He has the option to. If he does not take vacation and earn time, then what we have is you have a no pay situation, which is a technical term for not getting paid, which is fine. He can do that. The challenge with not getting a paycheck is then you wind up not having the deductions that you need for your medical and your union dues. So that creates a whole nother set of issues. So we have I think, Chris, you want to refer to, are we in compliance with the statute or not?
Well, it's Chris Stone, District Counsel, and you have a memorandum from myself and Attorney Fox that lays it out for you. I think it's important to note that a couple things. Number one, if this position were a shift position, if there were more than one shift, then the affected employee could request a change from one shift to another. Doesn't mean that we or the NBC has to create a shift that doesn't otherwise exist, though. So my understanding is this is not a shift. There's no shifts to this particular pay grade. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
The second thing is that in determining what is legislative time, or I'll say, public service time versus NBC time, that's entirely up to the employee. It's his or her determination, what's necessary. We cannot and have not and will not interfere with that determination. It's up to the employee to make that call in his or her sole judgment. And then finally, to the extent, as Scott pointed out, to the extent that time is spent in the public service role, and as the Chairman Curry pointed out, he's allowed to use, or he or she would be allowed to use their earned time, vacation or personal time to supplement the income that's lost, because we're not obligated to pay him or her during that public service time, in this case, in the legislature. So it's not a requirement, you're right, but if it's available to him or her, then they could certainly access that.
Chairman.
Commissioner Taylor, then
Go ahead,
Commissioner
go ahead,
Fogarty.
go ahead.
Commissioner Sweetney.
My understanding of the statute, and it's been, I believe it's been, I don't know what you call it, amended or something at some point too by the legislature, that it does speak of, protection for the employee with respect to, all, I thought it said, benefits and, seniority and so forth, that there is some sort of protection so that if, he does, unpaid leave or whatever you want to call it, that doesn't affect his seniority, and it shouldn't affect any of the benefit packages, whether it's going forward in OPEB or pension or whatever. But you did say that it would affect, which is is it the payment for medical and so forth, or is it the employee's contribution that's the issue? I'm just.
Yeah, if I may, Scott Chelson, I'm gonna have Jamie explain the process when someone is out no pay. So let's assume they don't have vacation or earned time or sick time for any purpose. They're not getting a paycheck because there's no money to pay them because they're out and they don't have any benefits, right? So Jamie, can you explain the process?
Absolutely. So this generally occurs if we have an employee who is missing an entire week or more of paid time. So if an employee goes on unpaid time and it essentially equates to a loss of time that would be greater than the money they're getting to cover their benefits, then essentially what happens is their benefit contributions, their individual benefit contributions go into what we call arrears. So it basically builds up in the system so that when that individual receives pay again, those extra deductions need to be taken again because they were missed on that check. In no way do we cancel an employee's benefits or have any impact on that. We do maintain coverage for employees that would be in this situation, but essentially the longer an employee goes on an unpaid status, the more it builds up. If an employee is gone one day, for example, on unpaid status, generally that's not going to be an issue. And essentially how the benefits are set up is they're set up in a priority status. Obviously, medical contributions, pension contributions, those sorts of things are priority and would be deducted from whatever available pay an employee has. But if it gets to a point where there's not enough money in that check to collect, whatever's not collected goes into this arrear bank that calculates that basically will stay there until the employee pays it back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it sounds to me like the statute, basically contemplates that there will be unpaid leave and that seeks to protect the employee from losing benefits or seniority rights. If that's how we cover it and that seems acceptable, then I understand it. I just wanted to make sure that my understanding that seniority and other things are protected. I don't think it would need to mention that if it didn't contemplate unpaid leave time. I think that's what it does.
If I might, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Stone, District Council. To the extent you refer to seniority, the statute is clear on that, and it provides that he or she would not lose. Let me just get the language. Lose any seniority status which may have accrued to him or her. So that's clear. The statute does not refer to other benefits though. As Jamie pointed out, we don't stop the medical coverage or we don't stop the eligibility for the pension, for example. So that remains, but that's not because we're precluded from doing that in the statute. We just don't do that, right? So
Yes, correct.
that's a policy, right?
Yes.
There is as you pointed out, a payment associated by the employee for those benefits, which if they're unable to be paid because of, as you said, a week away from work or whatever it might be, then they'll accrue. And I think we've had situations where we give the employee time to pay that back? Is that,
Yes, so it really depends on the duration. This happens quite a bit if employees have exhausted their sick time or whatever and have to be out for a medical absence or anything like that. In those situations, they can either, it'll kind of come out of their check as soon as they come back, and they may not get a check for a couple weeks until they get caught up. Or again, if it's a larger amount, we will work with the employee to come up with a payment arrangement to collect those funds as well.
acceptable to both parties,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
But,
Yeah.
yeah, and so my question is just to extend it to just a little bit farther from my understanding. So there are some things that are calculated on hours worked. For instance, workman's comp is not necessarily a benefit directly to an individual employee, but is a benefit to, for the general class of employees. Workman's compensation is calculated against actual hours worked. For instance, you don't count time and a half towards work. The MDC's contribution to the workman's comp fund doesn't have to count time and a half. It just counts total hours worked. So, I mean, that's sort of what I'm asking. So some of the benefits are calculated by, hours worked and some are not, or they're all calculated by hours worked. I'm just curious now. I'm
The
sorry if
benefit-
I'm drifting away from the original question, but I'm trying to make sure I understand what you just said.
The majority of the benefits are like, again, medical, dental, the union dues, those sorts of things. The pension, that's a percentage of whatever the wages are that you're making. So I don't know if I'm fully answering your question, but workers' comp, if someone was to get injured, even if they're using unpaid status, if they are injured on the job, that is still going to go through the same process as
I'm not
anyone
talking
else.
about,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about payments to them when they're injured on the job. I'm talking about the MDC's contribution to the workman's comp fund.
Yep.
Is charged on an hourly basis for each employee, from what I understand. So I'm just saying, some are hourly, some are not, but go ahead.
If I may, Scott Chelson, just remember, MDC is self-funded. So worker comp, I agree with you, Commissioner. When you're an employer, you have to pay into workers' comp. So, and there's a calculation for that, hours worked, blah, blah, blah. We're self-funded, so we're funding it. It's our money. It's so even though it's a separate pot of money, and worker comp trustees here who give us a presentation, they can explain that process. But it's our MDC money that's actually paying the worker comp to the employee. So there's no impact to the employee at all.
I'm not suggesting that's a question. I'm just saying that some are hourly, some are charged hourly, some are charged in some other fashion. That's all.
Yes, yes. And just to clarify, if I may, I'm sorry. The one thing there is, and Chris Stone covered it, the employee is not penalized whatsoever, will not be penalized whatsoever in terms of being away from work. So seniority and all those good things. However, when it comes to no pay, if someone's out extended no pay, and they're not paying in their pension, we have no say, and Jamie, once you cover that, we have no say in the loss of pensionable hours. So you want to talk about that?
So the pension plan really dictates credited service time, which is really where that would come into play. Again, that's going to be for an extended absence. If someone, again, is going unpaid for a day or two at a time, that generally is not going to impact their credited service time. But again, if someone is gone for an extended period of time, absolutely. If they're not contributing to the pension, then by the terms of the pension, they're not eligible to earn credited service during that period of time. And it's generally anything above 90 days.
Thank you. Commissioner Taylor?
Yes, I guess one of the questions that I have is the individual in question who is in the state legislature, for example. What are the alternatives in terms of if the individual says basically, can I work other than at the time that I would normally be working if I were not in the state legislature?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have.
And what would be the nature of that work?
So you're asking about the schedules? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I'm asking about two things. If you look at the statute, it would appear that, and I think there's an issue of mutual accommodation, that the employee and the employer can work out where the employee can work time-wise other than You don't have to create a shift for that employee. So I guess that's one of the things I'm asking about. And then depending upon the nature of the work in question, would that be something that then you could look at within the context of this particular provision? For example, is it something that the employee could do at home? Or it could do off hours, but essentially accumulate the same amount of time if the employee was doing the same work within the normal schedule hours within the MDC. In other words, if he or she were not in the state legislature.
So the first part of your question regarding schedules, we do have for our exempt and excluded employees and our local 3713, a flexible work schedule. That's new to 3713. That was done with the last contract negotiations, which would allow greater flexibility if it's approved by the operational department and fits the needs of the district to allow an employee to alter their start and end times of their work. It's not kind of coming and going whenever or working remotely. It's simply start earlier, or start later, end later, based on very standard. We have a form that is consistent for exempt and excluded and 3713 employees. And we do have members in both units who are using that. So,
And if I may, Jimmy, if I may,
Please, I'm not finished
okay,
yet.
sure.
I guess my question here is, it's twofold.
yep, I didn't get to the second
Well,
one.
look, twofold. I mean, in the work life of the country, working remotely has basically sort of become part of the standard work pattern. Now, it moves back and forth. People disagree as to how it's to be used or what have you. So I guess my first question is that something that we at the MDC should be looking at generally? And developing at least a standard policy, or at least to look around, look at the Aetnas and other places and see what they do, and to see if there's anything that we can do to develop a standard remote policy. And second, if in the case of Mr. Sanchez, what is it about his work that can or cannot be accommodated insofar as his work schedule is concerned? And let me be upfront about this. I find it a little surprising that essentially we've got someone in the state legislature and these people essentially have control over our charter and other activities. And I would think that we would be at least thoughtful or careful, perhaps even a little accommodating, without disrupting the operation. I'm not asking you to bring this place to a standstill, but I do think that we just need to be very careful and very thoughtful about what we're doing, making sure that at least we're consistent and we have a policy where no one can point a finger at us, or for that matter, get us involved in any controversy or litigation. So.
I'll preface it by saying we take these things very seriously in HR. So anytime we get a request for an accommodation, whether it be for a disability or, again, in this situation to accommodate the legislative work, we take that very seriously. Very much do I look into what the statute is saying. I'm looking at the nature of the work. I'm looking at union contracts. I'm looking at a whole host of things, including, and importantly, the operations of the department. So again, in no way was this kind of brushed aside and not a thoughtful decision was made about this. I can tell you from the remote policy standpoint, that is something we obviously are very engaged in talking about. It is, since COVID, the world has changed and this is what employees are looking for. And we're trying to figure out how is this going to fit into the MDC? Because we do have operational units and some jobs that are never going to be able to be remote jobs. So it's finding that equity amongst the unions and the exempt and excluded and trying to figure out where does that fit and how do we manage and make sure that the work is getting done. But it definitely is something that we are looking at in response to your first question. In response to your second question, I believe we have fully accommodated Mr. Sanchez in providing him complete flexibility to come and go basically as he needs to attend to the legislative responsibility. And that in making that, I'm going to use the word accommodation again, we did that with the department operations in mind. You know, it doesn't make it easy for the operational department to have to try to schedule work if they don't know if they're going to have a full crew. The assignment that Mr. Sanchez has is on a vehicle. He is a CCTV employee, a utility systems monitoring tech, and his primary job is to be on a vehicle using the cameras and going into sewer pipes. So that is the nature of his job. And again, we are trying to find an accommodation. And this is, again, least disruptive to the department as well. I don't know if that appropriately answered your question.
If I may,
Yes,
if I
sir.
may, Scott Schultz, I just to add to Jamie's. So as Jamie mentioned, what complicates this issue, and to answer Commissioner Taylor's question, we want to accommodate, we want to make sure we support the legislature, but we also have other outstanding factors that we have no control over, like the union contract. So working from home, remote policy, there is no policy that we would have to negotiate that with the unions, right? If you remember during COVID, all three unions have language that says if one person stays home because it snows, we have to pay everybody else time and a half. So we don't have the luxury of getting that out of our union contracts. We'd like to get it out, but it's not. And so we have that to consider. We do have, as Jamie mentioned, to be accommodating to the unions for everyone. This is the form that Jamie's referring to, and we've done this for years. This has been going on forever. It's been modified over the years, but it was just recently modified. And we do, with the support of the supervisor, we do support different, and I don't want to call them shifts because they're not, it's day shift, but it's different hours. So 6:30 to 3, 7 to 3:30, 8 to 4:30, 8:30 to 5, 9 a.m. to 5:30. And if we can support that with the supervisor, we will do that. We really struggled up until this weekend to really get an understanding from Mr. Sanchez as to what is he actually asking for. As we had accommodated him in the past as a council person, he came and go as he pleased based on meetings that he had to have with the council, and he took his vacation and earned time to do that. Jamie has offered him that very same flexibility, even though a truck leaves the yard at 8:30 with 2 people on it, or sometimes 3. And that's a TV truck, and they're out there checking and TVing the sewer system, and their job is to evaluate the sewer system. All of our employees in that TV truck world, they're certified to be certified to inspect that pipe or the manhole and rate it based on certain industry standards. And so when one person isn't available, then we've got to make another shift. We got to move people around so that we have people that can work together, because it's obviously not safe to work with one person on a truck. So that is something that we're going to have to address. We're happy to address it. We're happy to say if Mr. Sanchez had to come in and leave and come back, we will accommodate that. We'll figure out how to make that happen. We just, honestly, up until this weekend, didn't quite understand what his request was. And his request over the weekend to Jamie was, I want to work remotely, which is not an option. And mainly because Mr. Sanchez, and this is not the only reason, but Mr. Sanchez right now is not working on the truck. He's reviewing videotapes, which is fine. We've accommodated him. Did I mention? Light duty? Yeah. So we've accommodated Mr. Sanchez because he's been out on workers' comp. He's come back to light duty this January. And so we are, in order to, my worker comp staff here are always beating me up to make sure we support light duty. So we've accommodated Mr. Sanchez, but the challenge with Mr. Sanchez in light duty in reviewing videotapes, that he's not certified because his certification lapsed. So it's difficult for us to utilize him even in this light duty capacity because he's not certified. So Jamie has responded to him and made him aware. Our expectation is, as part of this light duty, you need to get certified, and we've given him some dates in February for him to get that certification back. So this is very, very important because right now the busy work that he is doing is not productive in the sense of able to, thank you.
It's not
So
the primary assignment.
it's the primary function. So we're going above and beyond to accommodate. But this work needs to be done in the field. This work is a crew, there's a team, and the goal is to really have our staff that do this work working together real time in the field.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Patel?
if you all recall, one time one citizen came here to complain about this employee because he was at the time maybe working, he was city councilman, and he was spending his time in election process. And somebody came and alleged whatever they allege. The point is that policy state has created and is very fair, and it has to be applied judiciously, and both sides are equally responsible for it. If employee does not behave in a proper manner, then certain things cannot happen. Based on what has been explained, union rules, supervisor's opinion, types of job where you, how many time what you can work, all those have been accommodated so far, in my opinion, very judiciously. So you guys should be commended for that. Somebody asking for working from remote, if job does not allow you to work from remote, you are not qualified to work from remote, then I'm sorry that the answer which they gave is perfect. And that's my opinion. I'm not a member of this board committee, but that's how it should be handled.
Well,
Commissioner Salemi?
yeah, thank you. Just one last question. I do want to say that when I was asked about workman's comp before, I wasn't asked about benefits or other pay. I was strictly using it as an example of something that's calculated on an hourly basis. You know, in the private sector, that's the way it's done. Here, I think we still have a workman's comp fund. I don't know how we pay it in. It's not hourly the way that you do in private sector. So the last question has to do with just quickly to the statute again about seniority. So if the option for this, for any employee here at the MDC is to take unpaid leave, unpaid time off, whatever we call it. So let's say, you know, the employee is here for 10 years, okay? And so he achieves 10 years. I don't know how many hours we count in a year here, you know, the business I was in is 2,080. I don't know how many we calculate here, somewhere,
Yeah.
something like 2,080. So do you, any accumulates, let's say in a short session, I don't know how many hours he's going to be needed, 32, 36 days or something like that. I mean, totally. But would we take those unpaid leave days and subtract it from the 20,800 hours that he put in for 10 years? Is that what we're saying? Or we just count the tenure as the 10 years, even though he missed those days?
Yes, we are not subtracting anything from accredited service standpoint for time that he is using his legislative responsibilities.
So
There
so
is
you
no
are, yeah,
impact to his seniority.
you are protecting his seniority in that way. That's, I just wanted to make sure that we had an understanding about that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's my last question.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Promise.
Salemi. And in
Just Commissioner,
Commissioner Gray.
just one quick question. do I understand he's not certified to do his job anymore? Is that what you said?
I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Vice Chair, Scott Jellison again. So, from our understanding, like I said, he was out on workers' comp for approximately 2 years. And when he finally was authorized to come back to work, light duty. So our workers' comp staff who's here, and the employee's doctor says this employee's ready to come back light duty. Light duty triggers something in workers' comp, right? It says you now have to go back to work. If the MDC so chooses to accept you back with light duty, which we did, if we chose not to, then the employee would have to do certain things to follow the worker comp rules. And I'll let them explain that. But in that process, yes, his certification lapsed. We have a rigorous training program here for our employees to maintain.
It's an internal certification.
No.
Oh.
So as we're aware that it had lapsed, Jamie has notified Mr. Sanchez and says, you must get this certification back. And we picked some dates. We found some dates in which February, whatever the dates were.
13th,
13th, 14th, 3-day seminars where he can go to class and he can actually recoup his certification. So we've notified him of that and basically have said, if you don't get your certification back, you know, we're not obligated to keep you on in light duty. So that's a whole nother topic that we're not here.
Good enough. Good
Yeah.
enough. Okay.
Thank you. I just want to remind commissioners, we have a very extensive agenda. We're halfway through our allotted meeting time. Are there any other questions on this item before we move on? Commissioner Hoffman?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question through you to the district council. Do we at the MDC have similar accommodations or provisions or protocols to allow for any employees who may be called into National Guard service in a similar way?
Jamie? Yes.
Yes, we actually have
This is yes,
provisions
but
in
go
our employee handbook as well as in all of the union contracts that speak to military service. And the rules are very clearly laid out there, and it's also noted in the pension document.
Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to item number 7, report regarding workers' compensation.
Okay, I'm actually going to turn it over to Brian Downs, who is Vice President at Workers' Comp Trust, who is our third-party administrator. Normally Diane Ritucci has come here to speak, but Brian will be kind of giving you a executive summary look at how our plan has performed over the last year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Again, my name is Brian Downs, Vice President of Claims with the Workers' Compensation Trust. It's my understanding that this summary has been provided to you electronically. The Workers' Compensation Trust has been providing third-party
Excuse me,
claim.
we're gonna
Brian,
pause.
sorry.
We're
Brian,
gonna
Just pause for a
Brian,
minute.
we're
Just
just gonna
pause for a
pause
minute.
just
We
for a
gotta-
moment.
I've just been informed that Commissioner Gentile, member of this committee, is on the line. She wants her voice to be heard on the election of chair. Unless anyone has an objection, I suggest we go back to that item. It's going to happen either tonight or at some other meeting, but she's here now and I think it's only fair that she be allowed to place her vote in.
All right, we'll go back to item number 3, election of the chairperson. Commissioner Gentile.
Yes,
Have
I
vote.
have, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes, go ahead.
Oh, okay, sorry. Sorry I was late. We have 2 very strong candidates for leading this PPNI committee. But today I am supporting Al Taylor for the position.
Thank you, Commissioner Gentile.
Assuming you know whether votes have changed, right?
Don, do you want to call the?
I don't think you don't have to. You don't. Right, so Alvin, you're the chairman. Nice job, James.
Good job, James.
James had my vote too.
Jim?
What item is this, John?
I'm sorry, let's move this along. Item 7. Workman's comp. Mr. Chairman, can you explain me exactly what
Yeah,
you did just? now?
Sure. Well, Robert's rules isn't, as rigid as one might think, right? The idea is to allow everyone to voice their opinion, and unfortunately, for reasons beyond her control, Commissioner Gentile couldn't be here at the call of the meeting at 4:00. She's now here. I communicated with her, asked her if she wanted her voice to be heard on the election. She did. And I think in fairness to her, and quite frankly to this board, in having a chair, she was allowed to place her vote and to, in effect, break the tie that was reached earlier in the meeting. Whether it happens tonight or next week or a month from now, eventually you're going to have a chair. And the will of the committee, as expressed tonight, was that their chairman is Alvin Taylor. So that's what happened.
So that's the final now?
That's
Or you are
final.
Going to have another,
No more votes on chair.
Every member of the committee is here.
And every member got the vote, right?
No one changed their vote.
Right. And I think I give all of you credit, whatever side you're on, is that allowing her to cast her vote was important.
we can now move to item 7.
Thank you, Commissioners. Again, my name is Brian Downs. I'm the Vice President of Claims with the Workers' Compensation Trust. We have been providing claims administration, as Scott mentioned, to MDC since October 1st of 2000. You are a self-insured entity, and we provide the claims administration for your organization. Last year, your policy, in effect, your self-insured year ended in September, and we take a look at that year compared to the previous 3 years. 2023 was a very good year in terms of the total number of claims. It was fairly equal to the last 4 years. There was a blip in 2001, but in general, you're running around 24 claims per year. That's between medical-only claims, which are less severe, that don't require employees to be away from work, and lost time claims. So under frequency, again, you had 24 claims. 11 of those claims were lost time. That is down significantly from the previous 3 years. Medical-only claims were up a bit from last year, but again, these are small incidents that usually do not require much medical attention. So overall, a very good year in terms of overall safety and injuries. The total incurred for this previous year was $455,632. Over the last 4 years, that has fluctuated between $40,000 and $50,000. So you've been very consistent. In 2021, you had a peak year of 806,000, but it's important to note that there were 5 surgical cases in that year that resulted in almost 55% of your total losses. Total losses or total incurred is a combination of what your organization actually has paid to date on these claims, and then reserves that we have put aside on the claim for future losses or future payouts on that claim. The top 3 departments with the highest number of claims includes operations, repair, and maintenance with 5, maintenance and facilities with 4, and water treatment and Supply Administration with 4. So fairly consistent across the board on those 3 top departments. 3 top departments with the highest incurred, again, paid losses to date, plus future losses on those claims, operations, repair and maintenance, WTS ground maintenance, and water treatment and supply administration. Top 3 accident types, not uncommon to this industry: slips, trips, and falls, manual material handling, lifting, and being struck by something. The top 3 accident types with the highest incurred: slips, trips, and falls, injured by, and manual material handling. Again, those are your 3 top loss sources. And I know that your internal safety folks, as we had a presentation here several months ago, continue to look at that data and work in those areas to control those risks. MDC, as Scott mentioned, has a very dynamic and aggressive return to work program. They look at it on a case-by-case basis, and where they can accommodate, they will. MDC has a medical care plan in place that's been in place since inception, where injured workers are being directed to appropriate credentialed medical professionals. The MDC is one of several of our insureds that access a reporting process called Trust Telecare. And I know that Scott was very interested in implementing this program a number of years ago, and we've seen some significant benefits. So in our world, the worst thing that can happen is what we refer to as lag time. When an incident occurs and we don't hear about it for days and weeks down the road. Statistically, you need to put a multiplier of 3 on that as time goes on, because we just can't get ahead of it. The employee's already off to treatment. And with the Trust Telecare system, employees, whether they're with their supervisor or without, have a call number to call into, where they are triaged by a nurse care manager, go through a series of questions, and then determine the right type of care for them to be referred to, including, if appropriate, the ability to self-care or perform first aid. This has been very successful. 94% of all claims have been reported through Trust Telecare last year. One of the interesting components of this Trust Telecare system is that the call is recorded. The call will not go through if the employee does not agree to be recorded. And this can help down the road on both ends. It can help the employer if the employee starts changing their story down the road to have a story that was secured within the moment of the injury. And conversely, it can help the employee if down the road an insurance claims adjuster is questioning a certain body part, saying it wasn't mentioned, when in fact we can go back to that call where we can identify whether it was or was not mentioned. So overall, last year's program was very successful in controlling not only the frequency of incidents, but the severity of your incidents and your OSHA recordable events. Self-insurance, if it is maintained properly, is not subject to the volatility of the insurance market. And MDC has had a proven track record for decades now with their self-funded program.
Are there any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That being said, we will move to item 8, report with regards to actuarial services.
Good evening, Commissioners. Just going to put up a quick report presentation. I just wanted to give you a report. This is Kelly Shane, Chief Administrative Officer. I'm here representing Bob and myself. Bob Barron wasn't able to be here tonight. We have awarded a contract for a new actuary. We awarded it this past fall, late fall, for work beginning this September. So we're saying goodbye to Milliman as our finance actuary, and saying hello to our new consultant, which is USI Consulting. Oh, sorry. So this is the agenda. It's a very quick presentation, actually, and I know we're short on time. So I wanted to talk just briefly about USI Consulting. We don't have them here today, but I can introduce them and why we selected them. Milliman, they are going to continue to support some of our requirements in 2024, and I'll go over that. And then I'll just briefly go over the procurement process so that you know how this came about. So we awarded our contract, our follow-on actuary contract for services beginning in January this year. Just so you're familiar, and I know you're familiar with our actuary services. So USI started services such as our pension and OPEB actuarial evaluations. They started that this January for our 2025 budget season. The self-insurance fund analysis of loss reserves, and those are the reserve recommendations and that we booked for our audit year of 2023. USI is one of the 3 large actuarial firms providing most of the actuarial work for Connecticut municipalities. The others are Siegel and Milliman, and those were the 3 that gave us proposals for our actuarial services. USI serves as an actuary for more than 185 municipal pension and OPEB plans in the Northeast region, and they work with more than 62% of the Connecticut cities and towns. They recently also acquired Hooker and Holcomb. I know that we have hired Hooker and Holcomb before for some small services. And their local office is right in one of our non-member towns, Glastonbury. Bob wanted you to know, I don't know if anyone knows these individuals, but Bill Tremco is the president and CEO, and Richard Syke is the senior VP. And I know we have we have our representative from USI for our medical here, and we're very happy with their services. So we expect to be happy with our actuarial services as well. So Milliman will continue. They do have a separate contract with us as our third-party administrator for the district's pension plan. They will continue that service. They provide us a website where our employees can go and look up their potential calculation for their retirement, for their pension. And they also do our administration and work with Jamie and her staff on pension calculations and the like. We also extended Becky's team, her actuary team, and her contract. It is customary for the industry for the actuary work on the GASB 67, 68, both the pension and OPEB analysis for the fiscal year that were the current audit year. So that would be 2023 audit year, for the actuary of record, which would have been Milliman for last year, to do that work for our 2023 audit. So they are under contract until May for those very specific services. And as I explained, USI will start for the 2024 year, so they will be doing those services beginning at the end of 2024. And just to quickly go over the procurement process, we sent out a request for qualifications and proposals back in July. We received 3 proposals. And we had a selection panel appointed by Scott, the CEO. They were responsible for evaluating the proposals. And the panel was both Bob Barron, our CFO, our controller, and our manager of treasury. They evaluated all 3 respondents, and all 3 were deemed highly qualified, and it came down to USI's price proposal. It was determined about 18% lower than the next lowest price proposal. So given that all the proposals were technically equal, and that was after interviews by the panel, their summary evaluation report and recommendation to Scott was to award to the qualified lowest price proposal, which was USI. It's a 3-year base contract with 2 additional option years, just like all of our other finance service contracts. And we made the award to USI in the late fall and executed that contract. Are there any questions?
Questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Item 9, Workforce Development Learning Program for high school students.
Thank you, Commissioners. Jamie Harlow again. I'll try to make this quick, but I wanted to update you on what we consider an important program. We've talked a little bit, I think, at previous board meetings about, various recruitment initiatives we're trying to do, both with Jeff King, working with our contractors, as well as in HR, just trying to attract and retain regular employees. Over the years, we've tried a number of different programs to try to get more entry-level individuals into the district. And this is a new program that we are really trying to expand some partnerships that we have. We have partnered with CTEC, the technical high schools locally, as well as some high schools in the member towns. We've also partnered with some other local organizations that can help also with the minority participation stuff. So we are at the very end stage, I would say, of getting ready to roll this out, which would target primarily high school age students who are close to graduating, so that we can get them in throughout the year instead of just focusing on the summer months, which historically has been what we have done, to work alongside and learn from our employees on a regular basis, so that when they're done with this program, hopefully we can then hire them into those entry-level jobs that hopefully you will see very soon. We do have a couple new ones there. In April, we actually are going to be partnering with, it's a mouthful, but it's the Connecticut Pre-Apprenticeship High School Program. Jeff Cathcart, I know Jeff King has talked about him quite a bit. We've talked to them all the time. We're also going to be partnering with DOT, those 2 groups, and we are going to be kind of leading a program. It's called Try a Trade program. They've done it in Massachusetts. And we're going to be doing it here at the MDC, where for 1 week, it's really during spring break, we're going to be accepting 20 to 25 high school students to kind of expose them to the various things that the construction industry does and the things that we do here at the MDC. So it's going to be mostly kind of a roadshow for us, and to get to kind of expose students to all of the exciting career opportunities that there are here. Through that, we are also hoping to get them some certifications so they have something they can walk away with. And ultimately, we're hoping that that will also kind of launch our ability to kind of identify some students through that program. We have solicited all of our member towns for students in that group, as well as CTEC and our partners on this work-based learning program. So again, we're hoping to identify some strong students from that 1-week program that then hopefully we can get into this work-based learning program. Again, just to see if we can start attracting and retaining individuals to kind of grow with the MDC. So I don't know if anyone has questions. Yes.
Yes, to what extent does this program cover all of the high schools within the MDC district?
We actually did a very deep dive last year, even before the Learn and Earn program, because I just felt like we weren't reaching everybody. We weren't getting a great response. So even with the Learn and Earn program last year, we did a better job of trying to really reach out directly to some, like all of the schools in the member towns. I had my staff kind of coming up with list of all of the schools to make sure we had the right contacts so that we can at least share the information. I can't make them do anything with it, but we have, again, tried to expand the outreach there. We did even more, this year with expanding to different partners, but also, yes, we sent it to all of the member towns in working with this partnership right now. So,
Chair?
yeah, so we're doing the best we can.
Yeah, Jamie, my questions, and I mentioned this before, that, within the district itself, there's at least one and maybe two of the regional vocational technical schools.
Yes.
So, and I thought we can make a special effort with them, because since they're delivering people to the trades, that we need here, that we're kind of getting desperate to find people that want to do this. So, but if you could just, is it just Prince Tech, or is it Goodwin as well? 'Cause
No,
I
it's
know
good. It's actually, we're partnering really with all of the technical schools. I do think our target audience for these students is going to be those from our member towns, because it's easier generally
Sure.
from a location standpoint. But we are not we're not like kind of eliminating anyone as an option. We are partnering with these schools and trusting that they're going to send us students who are capable and interested in kind of going through the career process, hopefully here. Because what we found historically with some of the other programs we've done, specifically the Learn and Earn, it's a great program. We have good instructors. It's fun. The students seem to, have good feedback, but we tend to get the students who want to go to college and that's their only path. Not every job here requires a college degree. So we're really trying to get the people who really want to work in the construction industry and learn a trade. Water treatment, wastewater, we're also focusing very much on those. Those are probably going to be our two lead areas where we start to get some people in, because it's a very tough market on that side, on the water treatment and the wastewater side, to try to find entry-level people. So we're really trying to do whatever we can to attract individuals. So again, they can grow. There's a lot of opportunity here, and we just want to get people in the door. So.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Curry?
Thank you. Commissioner Curry, Jamie, thank you for that. I just wanted to piggyback on Commissioner Salemi's comments on technical schools outside of our member towns. I have a grandson who attends Cheney Tech, and I'm almost willing to guess and assume that the population of Cheney Tech is made up of more students of our member towns than non-member towns. So I hope we are reaching out.
We absolutely are.
That's where our students are.
Right. No, we absolutely are, because just because they're going to someplace outside of a member town doesn't mean that's where they reside. So no, we are absolutely we're not eliminating any of those. We are opening it up to whatever fits. So
And I'm
we
not,
are working with CTEC.
I'm not
very
asking you to
closely.
hire my grandson. You can't afford him.
If I may, Mr. Chairman. Just to add to Jamie, so, this program has migrated really with Jeff in construction to now we're adopting it as our own internal policy to hire MDC employees. And we have met directly to both your Commissioner Curry and Commissioner Salemi's question on the tech schools. We've met with the two gentlemen who run the program for the tech schools, the state tech schools. The names of the individuals?
Brent McCarthy?
Yeah. And so we met with them here physically in this back room to be part of this program. So we're reaching out to the tech high school system, not just individual schools. We're trying to recruit those people, young people from those programs as well.
They act as a school district. They're
Exactly.
collected together as a
Yes.
district. Yeah.
Correct.
But we do have the names of the principals and the administrators at each of those schools that is also on our distribution list. So it's not just the head of, this who we're working with, it's also the principals of those assigned schools. I think some of them call them deans, so depending on whatever their titles are.
And there will be, the program is, the whole concept of the program is, as Jamie mentioned, state law, Labor Department allows juniors and seniors to work so many hours a week. So our expectation is someone's going to come and work after school 1-2 days a week. if they're a junior, and then X number of hours if they're a senior. And to get them into understand, not just, our Learn to Earn program is really 4 weeks, and it's not long enough to really, try and reach out to those individual students to really consider MDC. One challenge that we've had, and I said this before, a lot of the guidance counselors in schools are pushing college. Like we get a lot of kids that are really wanting to go to college in our program, and we're looking for the kids that don't want to go to college. They're interested in simply getting a wastewater or drinking water or construction inspection type work. And across the industry, I just came back from Boston yesterday. We've been talking about this forever, in the industry. Just like electricians and plumbers, people are retiring. Nobody wants to go into the industry. Nobody wants to work in the trades, and it's affecting everyone. So I think the MDC is very aggressive in our programs trying to recruit young people.
If no one has any other comments, additional comments, we can move this along, please. Thank you, Jane.
Welcome.
Item 10, report with regard to district wellness preventative care program.
Again, Jamie Harlow. I'm just going to introduce Chris Monroe. I know he's been here before. He's our consultant from USI, who oversees our health and welfare benefits, and has been instrumental in helping us launch our first year of our formal wellness program with WellSpark. So I'm not going to steal his thunder, but Chris Monroe will talk about how our first year has gone.
Before you begin, I had an experience the other day talking with a retired MDC employee who I knew had diabetes and did not take good care of himself. And he is now in dialysis. And I think that that's something that we really need to focus on in some depth here in terms of how do we manage this, because I think that's a big spend. And I'm just speculating now based on past information that that's probably a big part of our spend. Since we're self-insuring, I think that we really need to get down into the weeds on this and look long and hard. I'm sorry, I'll shut up at that point.
Good evening, Commissioners. Again, my name is Chris Monroe from USI. Sure. Very good. Thank you for having me back. To Jamie's point, what I'd like to do is spend a few minutes talking about the wrap up of our first year wellness program. Before I get into the metrics around the program, I just wanted to provide everybody with a little bit of a refresher in terms of how do we got to where we are today. Probably about 2 years ago, as we started to mine the data when it came to how we were spending our money on the health and welfare plan, we focused in on a couple of things. One of the metrics we looked at was the number of members who are accessing what I would call preventative care. Are people getting their physicals? Are people getting their mammograms? Are they getting their colon rectal screens? And we found that there was some challenging results that grew out of that analysis. If at that point you look back over a 3-year period and you looked at all eligible spouses and who was getting those requirements, we found that we were in around that 45-50% range. So when you have half of your population that's doing what their own doctors want them to do, that posed a challenge. That kind of launched us on a formal wellness program that we kicked off this past January. We partnered with a firm called WellSpark to manage that program. Folks who are on the health and welfare plan have a certain number of requirements that are all based upon their age and gender. If you are an enrollee, you are expected to get a physical. If you are over a certain age, you're expected to get a colon rectal screen. You're expected to get a cervical cancer screen if you're a female, and a mammogram as well for those who are females. So we had a set number of requirements that were expected of our population. We partnered with WellSpark to manage that plan. The last thing we wanted to do is be in an environment where we were managing it internally. And we looked to WellSpark to be the administrator around that plan. The way it works is our medical carrier Anthem sends a monthly claim file to WellSpark. And that file captures all preventative exams. So if a member has that routine physical, if they have that mammogram, if they have that cervical cancer screening, the member gets credit for that. Now, the way the member goes about validating that credit is one of two ways. The more preferred approach is for that member to go to the WellSpark portal, where they would simply put in a username or password. What they are expected to have done would be highlighted. And if they receive credit for getting those services, it would be captured accordingly. And the vast majority of our folks gain access to that information by going on their own to the portal. We also have a second means for those folks who might not be comfortable logging in and following that avenue, and it's to call WellSpark directly. So they can call in, they can give the folks from WellSpark their requisite information, and then they can validate where they are relative to, am I compliant or am I not compliant? To Jamie's point, we wrapped up our first year. When you start to think about the number of people who are expected to comply with the program, it was about 600 members. And when I mention members, I'm talking not only our employees, but any spouse that they cover on the plan. We exclude children from the requirement. So we're simply focusing in on employees and spouses. The starting point was we were about 50% compliant. In the first year, you hope to get that to that 65 or 70% range. And we came in a little bit over 70% at a 71 compliance rate. So we felt pretty good in terms of where we ended at the first year. I think the most important thing on this is we could have very easily gotten to 80% if we had a few more members who just went out and did one additional thing. The chart above shows those folks who missed being compliant by one metric. And we had 64 people who did everything we expected them to do, with the exception of one thing. So that could be the person who went out and got their annual physical, but they didn't get their colon rectal screen. Or that woman who went out and got the physical, got her mammogram, but didn't get her cervical cancer screening. They fell shy by one metric. Had they hit that metric, we would have been in the 80% compliance rate. So we feel pretty good about where we ended up. And the big overriding goal is, again, we want to get people front and center with their physicians. So whether you are somebody who's dealing with hypertension or a cardiac issue or diabetes, our feeling is that the best person to motivate you is your primary care physician. We feel that access to that regular care, it's certainly not going to eradicate cancer within the population, but it's certainly going to hopefully allow us to attack it at the lowest possible stage. I think the last time I was here, I made reference to some national statistics when it comes to cancer diagnoses. And the one thing that always comes to mind is breast cancer. You get breast cancer at stage 1 or 2, then you're looking at a $50,000 or $60,000 spend. You get it at stage 3 or 4, you're looking at about $150,000, $160,000. The more telling statistic is breast cancer at an early stage has that 85 to 90% survival rate 5 years post-diagnosis. You get it at stage 3 or 4, it's in the low 20% range. So there is a method to the madness when it comes to trying to steer our population towards that regular access with their physicians and getting those clinical services, if you will, that I think any doctor would say is providing good clinical care for the patient and from a physician standpoint. So that's where we kind of ended up, folks, in our first year. Just because we're launching into the second year, we'll follow the same format. We'll continue to provide people with notices throughout the year that, hey, get your exams, get your physicals. And then the hope is the 70 becomes 80 or even higher as we get into the end of the 2024 plan year. I do want to circle back on the question of diabetes, but I want to make sure I stop and open the floor to questions you folks might have based upon what I've touched upon so far.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman. Chris, how you doing?
Good. Scott, how are
Can
you?
you just mention, the reason why we're successful here is if everyone remembers, we added, as part of this wellness program, we always had a carrot, but we never had a stick. So we've added the stick. And Chris, you want to explain what the stick is for this program?
Yeah, so when we sat with the unions and kind of rolled out the program, we essentially took the position that, hey, there's a financial benefit to those who do what their own doctors want them to do. And that's to get all of these things taken care of. We recognize that there are some people who, for whatever reason, are not going to want to do it. And that's where the stick comes into play. So if you are that individual who's just yourself on the plan and you elect not to participate in these requirements, then you're going to pay about $750 more as a premium surcharge. If it's yourself and a spouse, then you're looking at about a $1,500 surcharge in total. So it was a little bit of, hey, we feel that there's value in kind of herding you towards what your own doctor wants you to do. But for whatever reason, that individual who elects not to do it, then we feel we're just to ask you to pay more from a premium standpoint. Very much similar to the workers' comp. This is a $15-16 million line item. And healthcare costs, right, wrong, or indifferent, still typically go up at 8 to 12% a year. So every time that needle moves 1%, it's an additional $160,000 that we have to come up with. So there's very much a vested interest in trying to keep that number as close to the current cost basis as possible. And we feel the one way to do it is with this program. And if you don't want to do it, that's fine, but you're going to be expected to pay more than the person who is compliant under the offering. Diabetes has always been a challenge. So let me paint a little bit of a picture of diabetes within the MDC population. At USI, we have what we call a data warehouse, and we call it USI 3D. What it essentially allows me to do is get a claim file from Blue Cross that kind of identifies in a de-identified manner every single claim that makes up that $13, $14, $15 million claim number. In preparing for tonight, I ran what we call a Model 71 report, which essentially pulls in anybody who has an underlying diabetes diagnosis. Now, wrap your head around the fact that we have about 1,500 members on the plan, and 125 of them have that underlying diagnosis of diabetes. Now, it could be some people who are uncontrolled in how they manage their diabetes, or it could be people who are fully controlled. We went back and looked at 2021, 22, and 23. And what we found is that the average diabetic spends about twice as much as our general population. So if we look at those 1,500 people on the plan and we look at from a per member standpoint, we're spending about $9,000 or $10,000. When we look at just those 125 diabetics, it's about $20,000. So they are double the rate. Now, it's important to understand it's not just diabetes that drives that 20,000. Those folks are what I would call comorbid. They're not only dealing with diabetes, but they're dealing with heart disease, high blood pressure, ortho issues, a pronounced probability around mental health issues. So it's not a question of diabetes got them to 22, but it's a contributing factor. So there is very much a vested interest in this type of a program. And as I said to Jamie in preparing for tonight, it's going to be tough to turn that ship around for the 63-year-old diabetic who's dealing with 3 or 4 comorbid conditions. Our wellness program is not going to be able to make inroads, I would argue, for that individual. The wellness program is going to get to that 30, that 35, that 40-year-old, that 45-year-old who is on that path to be comorbid at 60, 65. So again, the feeling is, hey, if my diabetes is uncontrolled, well, hopefully my doctor can motivate me to maybe move in a direction that helps me kind of best manage it as opposed to not managing it all. So again, the nice thing about kind of the 3D I referenced is, we know how to get to the heart of, what are we spending on our diabetics? And it's a problem. The hope is to see that number inch lower as we kind of get into subsequent years. Is it going to go from 22,000 to 10? It won't. but can we start to peel that number back and say, okay, we're going to always have diabetics, but are we closing those gaps in care? Are they going to get with their doctor and who's going to say, listen, I'm not satisfied with you getting an A1C every 18 months? Or are you using the emergency room when you have a flare up? I want to see you once a year, and I'm going to hopefully make sure we're getting your A1C done every 3 months. And we got you on the right drug mix. And by the way, you're also in a position where we need to do something as far as nutrition, screening for mental health. All of that stuff comes out of regular access to your PCP. But if you're not going to your doctor, it remains unchecked. And again, in my estimation, that's a contributor to why we have diabetics at a rate far greater than our average population. So it is all connected, folks.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
General public comments.
Oh, are there any general public comments? Can you state your name, please, for the record?
Yes, sir. My name is James Sanchez. Good evening, commissioners, staff, and guests. So most of you know me, and those that don't, my name is James Sanchez. I'm the legislator that's been spoke about this evening. It is true, I've been out on workers' comp for approximately 2 full years. And the reason I've been out is because at that time of my injury and when my doctor took me out, I was told there was absolutely no light duty allowed. That's what I was told. I've requested to come back to work to my supervisor at that time, was the superintendent now, is Tony Pantaleo, and both times he told me the same thing. And it's not that I'm trying to avoid work, it's that I actually had injuries that cause surgeries. And why did I get these injuries? It's because I'm doing my job. It's ironic how we're being told that if you're injured, you have to file a report. You have to let your supervisors know. But once you do that and your doctor gives you notes for light duty, what have you, it's a completely different type of treatment that you have to endure. So I didn't ask for these injuries. But I will say, in December, when I received an email from Jamie Harlow about returning to work and they're able to accommodate my restrictions, I was full of joy, extremely happy. Didn't know why, don't know how, don't know the reason, but I will say that I was extremely happy because those 2 years caused me very serious financial hardships. When I became a councilman here for the city of Hartford, I was extremely grateful for the MDC. When I was called to Tony Panaleo's office and I was told to come here to headquarters so that I was able to be the best councilman I can for the city of Hartford and our surrounding town, and also work with the community outreach as a community affairs assistant. I was here for approximately 6 years. I thought I was doing a great job. I worked in the South End, in the office over there on Franklin Avenue. I also worked in the North End. Sad to say that I had to defend the MDC as well as certain individuals in the North End because of what they felt MDC is about and what not about. And I defended it. So I moved back, I was sent back to the camera department with the knowledge that I had a bad knee and a bad back. Didn't matter. I had to do my job and I did my job. Unfortunately, it exacerbated my injuries. And this is when I was not allowed to work light duty. But we're here today. And yes, I have requested in several emails to Human Resource Director Jamie Harlow. I've also shared with her the Connecticut General Statute 2-3A, where it protects me as an employee and also states that I have a decision that I am allowed to work on shifts. Yes, where I am, I have to have what they call PACP license. It's a pipe assessment certification license. And yes, it expired. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, we have a 3-minute limit.
May I have just two minutes? I'll wrap it up real quick.
We hold people to
Okay,
the 3 minutes, and I just don't think that it would be appropriate.
understood. One sentence? Okay. I'm asking for a combination of examples that I can compensate the time that I use either coming in early, working through lunch, leaving late, in a combination also working remote. Thank you.
Are there any more public comments?
That's what I thought they're trying to work.
Moving to the next item, Commissioner requests for future agenda items. Once again, Commissioner requests for future agenda items. There being none, I will move to item 13. I'll entertain the appropriate motion.
So moved.
Thank you.